But, I'm working my way up, so.
Mhm. Well, I appreciate you having me on as your first guest and bothering to get all set up to do guests for just that reason. And just let me introduce myself a little bit by saying, yes, I am Malcolm J. Brenner. I'm 69 years old. Uh, Worked at a number of jobs, including reporter on the Navajo Nation. I'm very proud of that. Photographer, magazine writer, uh, filmmaker, and most recently, book publisher,
Okay.
self-published.
Which experience do you like the most? Like, which do you like doing photography? Do you like writing, filmmaking?
Well, they say with a cat, the whole behavior of stalking, attacking, killing, and devouring the prey is each broken down into separate actions. Each of those actions has its own separate fulfillment. So
True.
just because you fulfill one of those actions doesn't mean you fulfilled the whole sequence of them. And that's sort of like what I do is to me. I probably have too many talents for my own good. If I just concentrated on one thing, I'd probably be better off. But I have at this point in my life quit taking pictures basically because I've got a file of several thousand of them, only several hundred of which are categorized and available for sale through stock agencies. So I really feel, I take all the photos I want these days with my handy iPhone here.
Oh yeah, they take great
Yeah.
photos.
Well, they don't, but
Oh well. Of course, I'm not a photographer.
they're handy. They're handy. Yeah.
You have professional. I've never had a professional camera.
Okay.
I think they're great, but
Oh, they are. They are. It's just they're a little limited in that you can't really put other lenses and stuff on them.
okay, yeah.
Anyway,
But I did tell everyone to watch the short documentary on YouTube. So hopefully
a short documentary, Dolphin Lover.
Yes, I did say that. I put the link on it, but
Good.
so if you haven't seen that and you're watching this, watch Dolphin Lover on YouTube before watching this. And
because it explains the whole sequence of the experience I had with the dolphin. It only leaves out one significant part because basically there wasn't time for it, and that is the large amount of very puzzling human-dolphin telepathy that went on between me and Dolly. That was the dolphin's name, her real name. Her human name, I should say. Her real name sounded, I can't even begin to describe it, but where are we going with this? Just a second. We were talking about
that people need to watch the short documentary.
It tells what happened with me and Dolly, and
Yes.
but it leaves out the telepathy, which is something I hope we'll have a chance to discuss further today, along with the other two books that I've written.
Okay.
So, good.
So when you worked with the dolphins, right? And she just naturally took a liking to you. Is that? Just like, when did you start feeling like you guys were sensing each other or communicating with each other? Or like, how could you tell?
Well,
how could you feel?
Okay. All right. I met this dolphin with the woman who hired me to take pictures of the dolphins. Her name was Cynthia. In the book, I call her Selena. But she had written one children's book on dolphins and wasn't happy with the photographs. So she hired me to shoot some more for her. Then she never paid me.
Oh,
So I had to do something with the photographs, which is why I wrote the book about my sexual experiences with a dolphin. I shouldn't have smoked that thing. Ask the question again. This will pass after a few minutes.
okay. All right. Let me. Obviously, this will be edited because I'm trying to think what I was going to ask. And
you were asking how I met the dolphin. Okay. I met her, we were standing on the dock and looking down to the water, and the dolphin was looking up at us. And I got a feeling that she was lonely for some reason. I noticed there were no other dolphins with her. There were a number of sea level pens at this place that opened directly into a little sound. I think it's called Lemon Bay. Yeah. That's part of the Gulf of Mexico. So the dolphin she was unique in this respect. Okay, she was not your common everyday dolphin because her trainer had trained her to go into open water and perform beside this riverboat, jumping for fish. And this was quite a trick. I mean, the boat's moving, the dolphin's moving, the water's moving, everything's moving. The dolphin has to judge where the trainer is going to be when she gets to the fish. It's quite a bit of, computation to do that.
Yeah, they're very smart.
Right. The first time I got in the water with her. See, these are three different things. The first time I got in the water with her was a little bit later, and on my second trip to the park, I think. Of course, everybody wants to swim with dolphins.
Right.
Except the people who have phobias about it, like that, I don't know, actress or something. I got in the water with her, and she wouldn't come near me, basically. She was swimming around the edges of the pen. Dolphins are supposed, according to the scientists, to be, leery of new things in their environment, and I was a new thing. So the assistant trainer was watching me, and he said, "Oh, you got to be more aggressive with dolphins. It's like girls. Make the first move, just reach out and touch her." He did, honestly. That's what he said. I thought, okay. So I lunged out at the dolphin, and I just briefly touched her flank, and I thought, okay, maybe she's scared of my hands. Animals develop fears for no reason. Horses are scared by a bright flash of light. Cows, maybe the dolphin is just scared of my hands. I thought, what's wrong with these hands? They're just standard issue human hands. We do things with them. We beat swords into plowshares. We make atomic bombs, And in passing, I swear, I did not dwell or fixate on this idea. It just passed through my mind as one of a number of thoughts. I thought about the way a man uses his hands to pleasure a woman in sex, in foreplay. The dolphin lifted her head out of the water and stared at me. And then, as quiet as could be, she changed and just swam up to me and just lay there in the water next to me.
Just comfortable with you, automatic,
just absolute sudden behavioral change. Yeah.
Oh.
I started scratching her head because people don't realize this, but a dolphin in a pool, a pool with a connection to the ocean, has a bunch of little fish around it, like mosquitoes. But these fish would form a little spiral around her head. Her skin was flaking. Dolphin skin does that if they don't have anything to rub against, like other dolphins. So I reached down, I started scratching the dome on her head.
Actually, I'm sorry, they just like that? It's something they do in nature, scratch their heads up against stuff?
Yeah, you constantly have to remove old skin that is dying and falling off their bodies so that nothing grows on them.
Okay,
like
I did not know that.
Seaweed or barnacles.
Oh, it would grow on them, wouldn't it?
Yes, barnacles do grow on whales. Whales get all kinds of strange things growing on them. Yeah.
Okay.
But dolphins don't usually.
Okay.
I started scratching her head, and she slowly swam forward, and as she did, she turned over on her belly. So now I'm rubbing her belly, and she's still swimming forward, and I get to rubbing her vulva, and she stops. She stops swimming. She's just lying there letting me rub her vulva. And I think, this isn't right. this is like consensual sodomy with a dolphin or something, you know. All right, let's go back to the head and start over again. She did the same damn thing, and I got out of the water.
Yeah, that would be kind of like weird, a weird feeling.
Well, a lot of people impute bad motives to me because I am a zoophile. I knew nothing about dolphins. Dolphins did not enter my sexual fantasies at the time. They were not part of my masturbation repertoire. I knew that they were mammals. I knew they had to mate. I couldn't imagine how they do it. So I didn't, you know, it wasn't a staple for me. You know, I didn't look at skin diver or, you know, yachting for masturbation pictures. Anyway, the first time I made telepathic contact with her, and this was really significant and interesting because I'd never been in a place where there had been another mind inside mine before. I had been in places, I'd started taking drugs when I got into college. Started with pot and stuff. You know, pot was good. But I'd had odd experiences where it seemed like a dissociated part of my mind was taking control of the situation when I was out of it, you know? Maybe you don't. You look like you're pretty straight. But I went out with some friends from New College. We drove around in an old car and we ended up on Turtle Beach, which is a beach in Sarasota, where I was going to college at New College. And we got out of the car at Turtle Beach, and my friend Gordon and I had a pot to roll a joint with, and I was trying to roll the joint under a street light. This was at night on the sand dunes with the wind blowing really, really loud. Can you turn the volume down on your dog?
Yeah, I know, right? That's what I'm trying to do. Like,
okay, that's good. Yeah, okay. And so I was watching, you know, trying to roll this joint, and I wasn't very good at it at the time. And I have this vision or a sensation that it's not me looking out of my eyes. It is something else. And I didn't know what, but was interested and puzzled by this very strange behavior. You know, it was like a problem to be solved, trying to wrap this tube of very thin paper around this crumbly herbal substance with the idea that this subject was going to smoke it and obtain some benefit thereby. And then pop, you know, and I was back in the real world again. Not a pretty joint, but it was smokable. And, you know, I didn't understand what was going on. Later, driving back to New College, the same presence came to me in the back of a station wagon, and was very impressed by all the metal around it, and it was like it was seeing everything for the first time.
Through your eyes.
Yeah, I felt like I was being used like a planetary probe or something. You know, they were using my eyes as TV cameras, and I kind of resented this. I was stoned, and there was also just a sense of joy or discovery at what this thing was finding out. And I said, "Well, you want to see this? You know, we're both on the astral, so come out and look at it on the roof of the car." So I jerked it through the roof, and we both sat there, and you know, there's street lights going by, and you know, the vistas spread around us. And I said, "You think this is cool?" I jerked it up into the air, and we were looking at the whole, you know, the whole lights of the city of Sarasota spread out everywhere, and electricity running to all the homes, and jets flying, and satellites in space, and the thing. Said, "This is too complex for me. I'm getting out of here." And it departed. I put up with this thing for, I don't know, 2 to 4 weeks, maybe a month. with it coming and going from my mind. I thought I was going schizophrenic.
Yeah.
Well, I have a ex-brother-in-law who is schizophrenic, and schizophrenic isn't like that. Schizophrenic is in empty parking lots, you get into arguments with somebody and you lose the argument, and then they beat you up, but they aren't really there.
Ugh.
That's schizophrenia.
Yeah, that would be awful.
Yeah. This was like a hallucination or a fantasy. And finally, one night, I kind of grabbed the bull by the horns and I said, "All right, who are you?" And the entity said, "Well, why don't you guess? All you got?" No. Strike one. I went down a list of, progressive disembodied entities. I'm not religious, so there aren't a great many of them. And finally, in desperation, I said, "Are you Dolly the dolphin?" It was like I'd hit a pinball machine, and gotten 1,000 points. It was like lights went off everywhere, and there was a sense of warm affection, but at the same time, a sort of bemused frustration, as if an old dog that you've been patiently working with for years finally learns a simple trick. And that was my first telepathic contact with Dolly the dolphin. So that's the answer to your question.
I mean, I'm not saying that I don't believe that didn't happen, because I know they still study dolphins and they are so smart, and they still study like just how they communicate with each other. And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Who knows? So
Well, maybe this is jumping ahead in the script you sent me, but we discount dolphins because they don't have these. They actually do. All the bones in the human hand are fused together in the dolphin's flippers. So they're useless except for high-speed maneuvering in the water, which is kind of critical to their survival, so they're not useless. The dolphins are, I think, the most evolved group of mammals. They deviate the most from the quadruped design that is standard for mammals. You don't find mammals doing bipedalism, and you don't find them without legs, except in the dolphins, and bipedally us. And my theory is that humans aren't really bipedal, we're an erect quadruped. Just look at a pregnant woman sometime who's 8 or 9 months pregnant, and you'll understand what I mean.
Oh, I've had 2 kids, so.
Well,
Yeah.
Did you ever feel like you'd rather be a quadruped with all that weight hanging below you rather than sitting?
It was not comfortable. It was not at all.
Anyway, next question.
Okay, so of course I'm going to be editing my times, I think. So I forgot that we made let me go back to my timeline.
Yeah. I printed this out, so. Oh, you were going to ask how I found out about the bestiality episode.
Yes, and thank you. Like, we had a puppy, or our dog of 9 years passed away.
Oh.
So over the weekend we got a new puppy. So I've been trying to keep up with everything while watching.
Oh, I see.
So
yeah,
it's really been a train wreck behind the scenes. But so I'm glad you printed that out. So
you know what they say in the film industry? We'll fix it in the editing.
Yeah, yeah. So hopefully my editing's a little bit better. So yeah, how did you find? That's what I want to know. How did you find that on YouTube? How did you find my episode?
Ever since I published the book, I've been doing Google alerts, or Google sweeps, I should say. Google alerts with topics like dolphin, whale, and occasionally I Google my own name too, just to see what people are saying about me. If, I know that some people don't like me and some people really don't like me, but some people, commenting on my videos on YouTube and other things, post these things about wanting to castrate me or, put me away for life or, you dirty scum, nothing is, too bad for you. And those are the ones you want to watch out for. So I just like to be aware of them. And I just read an article about zoophilia somewhere else. And I decided to Google zoophilia and bestiality. And your program came up under bestiality. And I thought, I wonder what she's got to say about it, And what I found was that you were reading from a bunch of sources that are sort of pretty much inform the standard viewpoint on bestiality that society has. It's in some way degrading or degraded, maybe both at once, or I've just never felt that way. I have felt very embarrassed when I was a teenager. I mean, I wanted so hard to be a normal guy. But then I saw that most of the normal guys had the attitude towards girls that was about the same of a hungry leopard seeing a wounded antelope walk by.
Yeah. Yeah, that
I didn't feel that. I didn't feel that way to girls. Girls might be pretty, they might not. But, what would turn my head would be seeing a fetching German Shepherd bitch being walked down the street by her owner. That would make me look.
So now, were you looking at, animals and stuff before you went and saw the movie? Or was it at the movie that you realized?
Yes, it was my first awareness that I was experiencing something that the other theater goers weren't experiencing, which was I was experiencing the scene of Tommy Jones dancing with the French starlet, I forget what her name was, and turning into a dog at the same time as sexual. It really turned me on. And I got an erection sitting in the dark theater. And then he completely turns into a dog and runs out with the tuxedo and pants still on, and gets rid of them along the way, I guess. But dogs can do that. He's English sheepdog. Can't see anything anyway.
So that must have been confusing then. Or was it did it just feel right to you? So it didn't feel
it really didn't color my life much either way until I hit adolescence. When you're basically your gonads and everything else explodes like hand grenades.
And you would know that's when you probably really started noticing, like you said, if you saw German shit.
Yes, that's also when I started doing things like producing my own pornography, which was animals mating. I became intensely interested in visual images of animals mating. And there's a term for that. It's called mixoscopic zoophilia.
Mixoscopic zoophilia?
Yeah.
Is watching other animals
mate or seeing pictures of being stimulated. Yeah, being stimulated by that specific event.
Okay.
And humans, not so much. I wasn't a lot for Playboy or Penthouse, even, God Save Me, Hustler. The women were beautiful, I'd acknowledge that, and they had big airbrushed boobs, but they didn't turn me on. Now you have to understand, there were two things, I think, that happened to me. Because I think zoophiles basically are made, not born. Now, other people in the zoo community disagree with me. They feel that they were born zoo, just like gays feel they were born gay, or transsexuals feel they were born in the wrong body. One of them was that my parents had some very strange beliefs for the 1950s, and they were involved in this quasi-cult around Dr. Wilhelm Reich of Austria, one of Freud's students, who never completed his own psychoanalysis with Freud, which he was supposed to do. But Reich was famous for having discovered this fantastic energy orgone in the 1930s while bumbling around with microscopes and stuff. He was the kind of scientist who leaps into a field, messes around, makes some discovery, pronounces it significant, and then goes on to the next field. So he started out as a battlefield medic in World War I, became a doctor, became a psychologist, became a student of Freud, began investigating the libido, got into electrical, stimulus, and ended up looking through a microscope and discovering this energy and all kinds of strange. I mean, the guy also wrote fantastic amounts. You wanted to sleep. He wrote book after book after book. He, in addition to a really bad narcissism. I mean, pardon me if your politics are right of Attila the Hun, but this guy we've got in the White House, he's a narcissist, and he's bad. Reich thought of himself as a good narcissist because he'd made this great discovery, and orgone energy came to assume a sort of godlike realm in the Reichian universe, and it was clashing with the deadly radiation from atomic bombs. No, wait, it was alien UFOs with atomic engines that were putting this energy into this poisonous radiation into our atmosphere. He made it rain in the desert. The federal government ended up. He shipped it in defiance of a federal order. Somebody in his outfit shipped one of these accumulator boxes, these orgone intensification devices, across a state line, and they weren't supposed to do that. And when he got taken to court by the feds, he said, "You don't have the right to legislate science." Well, maybe not, buddy, but you're practicing medicine too. In a move right out of Nazi Germany, the feds seized all of his books about describing the orgone accumulator, for which he is somewhat famous, all of his books about orgone theory, and burned them, along with all his laboratory apparatus that had anything to do with orgone energy.
Gosh.
Reich was committed to a federal penitentiary where he died of a heart attack in 1957, having been a heavy smoker most of his life.
Wow. I never heard of that guy.
He is deliberately obscure because it's like him and Scientology, two movements that started out in the 1950s, and Scientology declared itself a church and went on to become rich and famous and exploit, millions of people. And Reich ended up in federal prison because he just wanted to do his pseudoscience.
Oh, that's crazy. That is absolutely crazy.
That's one factor. Okay. I was treated by a guy named Dr. Albert Duval, and my treatment started when I was 2 weeks old because when I was being born, my mother nearly killed me. She suffered a contraction of the cervix as I was coming out.
Okay.
And my father said, it contracted right around here, right around my forehead. My father said I was blue from here to the top of my skull, from no blood flow or no blood getting out of it. So Dr. Duval was supposedly treating me for the muscular tensions that the stress of my birth had caused. Now, around 5, I have contiguous memories. In other words, clear memories that go all the way back how painful this man's treatment was, and how degraded and helpless and frightened I felt under. He would squeeze my forehead until I screamed and begged for mercy. But the walls of his office were made of soundproof paneling, so my father, sitting outside in the waiting room, couldn't hear what was going on. He felt you were lying in front of this guy, a 5-year-old kid, totally naked. He could poke and prod and squeeze you anywhere, and you couldn't do a thing about it. This is a horrifying predicament to be in. On top of that, when I was in therapy with a PhD combat-trained Vietnam veteran who specialized in treating PTSD, because this is what I have, I recovered the memory that he performed fellatio on me, and it was utterly terrifying. I also know that when I went to get a barium enema, it was the most painful event of my life, and I couldn't hold the barium in without something to bite down on. And I suspect he also sodomized me.
Very possible. So, like,
this guy, when Wright died, he picked up his practice in New Jersey, where he'd been treating me and hundreds of other kids. He liked to treat whole families, you see, because then he could get the parents to buy into what he was doing. The parents need never know that he was sexually abusing their kids, but they'd know that they were going through painful therapy that was hopefully someday going to produce a neurosis-free human being capable of having a full Reichian orgasm. That was the whole goal of therapy. Wright came to believe that sex was everything. Sex was the thing that was needed for health, mental, physical, and emotional. It was created gravity and light. I mean, never mind. I can't explain it. It's such a big delusion. It's cosmic. And Wright came to see himself. He wrote a book called Listen, Little Man, was scolding people for ignoring him. He wrote another book called The Cosmic Christ, which was about how he might be descended from spacemen.
So that really does sound like Scientology around all that time.
Well, he just went into the wrong profession. He wanted to practice science. There's no money in science, but there's lots of money, honey, in delusion. And religion is the biggest delusion of them all.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm glad we see eye to eye on that. I was hoping you weren't a strict Muslim or something and come and kill me.
No. There's so
edit
much
that part
money.
out. Would you?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy.
The second thing was, my dad was a pretty nice guy. In fact, I went to many men's groups in like the 70s and 80s, and the guys all say, they gather around in a circle, and my dad, he wasn't much of a father to me. He'd come home from the factory, and all I wanted to do was drink a few beers and read the paper or watch the news, and then he'd get into an argument with mom and go to bed or something. And my dad would come home, we'd have a martini, he'd change his clothes, and we'd go out in the backyard and throw the ball around. He'd take me fishing on weekends. He was a remarkable man, and he was a radar engineer, for one thing. So he had a natural interest in UFOs. This was the 1950s, remember. UFOs were being, 1952, there were sightings of UFOs over the Capitol in Washington, D.C. At least they weren't inspiring rioters like last week. But my mom was another story. Okay, and they had a whirlwind romance. She was a war bride. He was a lieutenant in the Army. He had married. She was a nurse in the Royal Air Force, or RAF.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and she was in London, where a little thing called the Blitz was going on. This was Germany's attempt to bomb England into submission before invading it. Well, they never pulled off the invasion. And for some reason, the Germans stopped bombing the British airfields, which was very effective for them, and started bombing London. It wasn't bad for Londoners, but really good for the RAF, and they were able to get their Spitfires fixed and re-up there. But anyway, 3-day romance. My mom told me late in life that she only married him. He proposed to her, And she said, "Oh, I'll marry you if you can get me out of the RAF nursing service." 3 days later, she was on a boat headed to America. Her head was spent, and my dad was with her. He'd gotten her out of the RAF.
Your dad's efficient.
He was good at pulling strings and, pulling heartstrings.
Yeah.
As it turned out, my mom had a very, very dark history. Okay. She grew up in Dickensian poverty. You know what I mean by that? Charles Dickens,
I don't.
the 19th century English author who wrote of, boys who overcome terrible poverty and being of modest means to become famous, decent, wealthy, popular men. My mother's story sort of went the other way. She came from a fairly wealthy family. Her mother was Irish and alcoholic. Her father was a very daring Englishman. Among other things, he did underwater recovery in the days of hard hat diving.
Okay.
That was dangerous and difficult.
Probably high pain too.
Well, you got to keep part of what you recovered.
Yeah.
So, and he ran a hotel in the city of Hull, and they were doing all right until he died in the 1918 influenza plague.
Mm.
And he didn't have any insurance. My grandmother was left. Now she'd had three girls and a boy. My mother was the last child she had, and she didn't get an abortion, and she only carried it to term because her husband promised to take her to see that famous woman dancer. Who was she? Oh, God. I can see her picture before me, but I can't remember her name right now. Maybe it'll come back to me later on. And, my grandmother decided to keep the baby, and the baby was my mother. So my mother got born, and something absolutely terrible happened to her. She had an older brother. In fact, I guess the oldest child of the family was a cabin boy in the Royal Navy. And he came home when my mother was 2, and he raped her.
Are you kidding me?
No. I didn't learn about this from my mother. My sister is the only one in the family who got this story. Obviously. Why? But that explains a lot about my mother, because after that, she couldn't have an orgasm. She was hysterical. She had a chronic fear and, I think, really hatred of men. And when you hate something, you try to control it. When it scares you, you try to control it. She couldn't control my father all that well. And my older sibling was a sister, so she felt sympathy. But I'm Malcolm in the middle, literally middle of 3 children, and my mother really, I think, unconsciously set about to try to create a personality where I would be a brilliant genius, a doctor or a scientist or a lawyer, renowned in that field of knowledge, and totally reliant on her for all my emotional guidance. She wanted to control every aspect of my life.
Did she not like you hanging around with your dad? I bet she didn't like that.
Yes, there was a war between my parents going on. I wrote a book about this. It's called Growing Up in the Orgone Box: Secrets of a Reichian Childhood.
I'm definitely going to be looking over this stuff. That's interesting.
That is available as an ebook from Smashwords. I'm just about to reprint the trade paperback edition of it. Okay. So I'll let you know when that. You can read the Smashwords copy if you want. It's $6.99.
Okay.
Yeah. As a result, I don't think I developed the kind of warm contact with a female figure that enables one to fully develop sexually as a male. There's a transference from the mother to another female figure. Sigourney Weaver, Janis Joplin, I don't know. But
so I guess also your parents wouldn't have been, like, your mom wouldn't have been affectionate at all, would she, to your father?
Her affection was conditional. And it was also, in my family, we use the description of my mom as an emotional minefield, because you never knew whether your next step was going to blow off your foot or be safe. She never hit me, but I dreaded the lash of her tongue worse than anything, because she had a mouth that would make, Lee Ermey, the guy in Full Metal Jacket, the Marine Corps drill sergeant, he would blush hearing her.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And after I got out from under her thumb in my early 20s, I spent a lot of time looking at my own behavior and trying to sort out what was authentically mine and what was hers. I didn't want to just mindlessly rebel and do the opposite of her, because some of the things she did was good, like investing in Walmart back when it was owned by Sam Walton, $2 a share or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good idea.
Well, I'm not saying she was stupid. I'm just saying that she was cruel and unpredictable. And just there was a randomness about her. It's like the president, he can say, "Oh, good, go, rioters." The next day he's saying, "I condemn the rioters." You never knew where she was.
Day from day.
No. And that is the worst way to be raised. If someone is consistently good to you, you love that. If they're consistently bad to you, you develop defenses against that. And they're, armor plate. But if somebody is good one day and bad the next, you don't know whether you're coming or going.
Yeah, that would be awful.
That was why I think, and these things go deep. I mean, obviously, I didn't decide to become a zoophile at any point. I just knew that what turned me on wasn't girls, it was fucking animals. Animals fucking. And I didn't enter into that at first, but my mother did breed poodles, and I did try to have sex with this miniature poodle who was rather too small, and I didn't know anything about dog sex at that time. And it wasn't successful. I think I caused the poodle maybe 30 seconds of intense discomfort because before I had a premature ejaculation and let her hop off the bed and lick herself. But I found actually that masturbating on male dog we had was much more rewarding in terms of response, because what I was, you can masturbate, but you don't have a partner. There's nobody there that's responding to you. I wanted somebody else to get excited with me, and this male poodle was the easiest thing to do. So for a long time, in junior high school and early high school, I'd come home after school if nobody was around. I'd jerk the poodle off and jerk myself off. And I knew I was supposed to be having relationships with girls, but my parents made the brilliant move of pulling me out of public school, where I was just getting socialized, and putting me in an all-boys private school, where over my protests, I should say, or they just wore me out,
Yeah.
I think it'll be good for you there. There'll be a better class of boys there. No, Mom, the boys are just as bad. Their fathers just have more money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I went there until my family actually broke up. My father admitted what seemed like an affair to him. The poor girl on the other end of it was extremely embarrassed by the fact that my father, who was much older than her, expressed his love for her. She had a fiance already, and but it was too much for my mother. There had been some other affairs in my, I understand now, why my father would do this. He was looking for female company.
Yeah.
My mother was not feminine. The most startling thing I ever saw when I was a kid was one night when my mother got all dressed up and put on makeup and earrings and lipstick and eyeshadow like you're wearing for a party. She actually looked like a woman. Couldn't believe it. She looked so feminine. Yeah. I guess after that, until Dolly came along, I really didn't have any sexual experience with animals. And my only other animal besides the dolphin remains dogs. So, I'm not attracted too much to barnyard animals like goats or cows or pigs. Chickens, unfortunately, it kills them if you have sex with them. You break up a bone in the pelvis.
Yeah, I always wonder, like, that's one of the things. It's like, how does, like, just functionally, like, how does some of that even work? Like with chickens, you said, like, it breaks
I
their.
don't know. I wouldn't do it.
I
I have a friend who was a teenager and killed a chicken that way, and he's been sorry about it ever since. He didn't mean to hurt the chicken. He just didn't know. But female. The trick is, you only have sex with female animals when they're in heat. Then they really, really want sex, and they're not fussy about where it comes from.
Okay. Okay. I didn't think about that. So.
Yeah.
So,
have you ever watched a female animal in heat court a male animal? It is absolutely scandalous, the stuff they'll do.
What's crazy is I haven't, because all of the dogs I've had have, been spayed, or cats and dogs, whatever. And so I've never let them get to that point. So I haven't seen it.
Well, you can look at a lot of films on YouTube. But now I look at them as much for the way the animals are behaving. And if, the female animal is au naturel, if she isn't hobbled or stuck in a breeding crate or something, she actually courts the male, She runs ahead of him. She backs it into him. She nips him. She gets him to play. She gets him excited and worked up before he mounts her. In fact, in some animals, like dogs and cattle, the female will mount the male to show that she's excited.
Okay.
Now, this brings up something else, because people always say, "Oh, a dolphin rubbing against you, it's just like a dog humping your leg." No, it's not just like a dog humping your leg. First of all, the dog humping your leg, I'm 90% sure, is not after sex. It's after dominance.
Yeah.
It wants to show that it's really the dominant one around here, but it doesn't want to bite you, so it'll hump your leg instead.
Yeah.
And they do this. I had a spayed female dog named Pugsley, and my housemate had a male dog who was not spayed. And every night after dinner, Pugsley would hump this male dog for no reason except, to keep the social order in the house. He was the bottom dog on their social pyramid. And he didn't pay her any attention, of course, but it was just funny to watch. A dolphin is after pleasure. And you can tell because they're not robotic about it. They're not mechanical. They're ingenious. They're inventive.
I do know that dolphins have the reputation of being perverts, so they are highly sexual.
Hey, I'll tell you something on the sly. So do human beings. What is perverted if you're a dolphin?
Nothing. That's just what they say. Like they'll, you'll hear stories.
That's a human judgment call.
It is.
That's like saying they eat raw fish, or they don't use toilet paper.
Yeah.
No, dolphins are not perverted. Some dolphins, first of all, there are dolphin cultures. There's a dolphin culture in Sarasota Bay where it's been studied. The longest running longitudinal study of dolphins is up there in Sarasota Bay, the Sarasota Dolphin Research Program. A guy I met in high school, Dr. Randy Wells, runs it. And we've known each other ever since. Had lunch a couple of years ago. I've recently had a bit of trouble because I hate his mentor. I won't even talk about him here, but different cultures. For instance, the dolphins in Shark Bay, Australia, apparently herd the females, and there's a hierarchy of males that start out with groups of 2 or 3, then get into bigger groups, and I don't know, there's some king dolphin somewhere, but it's basically they think the males herding the females in heat so they can fuck them. Never mind the fact that they're fathering the next generation. Nobody's thinking about that when they're fucking, I assure you. Not horses, not cows, not pigs, not dolphins, and certainly not people. I asked Randy if the dolphins in Sarasota Bay did the same thing. He said, I'd never seen any evidence for it. The dolphins are just like, really, this is what's scary. Dolphins are so much like us that we should be glad they don't make things. They don't have fire. They don't smelt metal. They don't make edged weapons because they don't have hands, okay? The dolphins have been here, Terry Lee, for 12 million years without any change at all. Evolution has not thrown anything at them in 12 million years that has caused them to significantly change either their form or their behavior.
That's amazing. I mean, really, that's absolutely amazing. So really,
yeah,
we know they're smart. They're probably smarter than us.
Well, it all depends. It all depends on one thing. A couple of things, actually. First of all, do they communicate? Do they communicate anything beyond what's happening right now? Because most animals, communicate one way or another, that kind of thing. Prairie dogs, little bitty brain the size of a shelled walnut, they've got a vocabulary of 500 squeaks that they give each other. They can tell you whether it's a hawk or an eagle flying overhead, whether a guy walking through the prairie dog colony is wearing an overcoat or not. It's pretty amazing. But they can't tell you what's going to happen tomorrow. They can't make up a story about another prairie dog or tell you a lie about another prairie dog because they have no imagination.
Yeah.
One of the ways, in fact, the only real way that dolphins are like us is an imagination of things that are not happening here and now. And that they can also think about how other dolphins are thinking. I know this because of my experiences with the dolphins at the park. And our minds are apparently as easy, if they want to get into, as a pup tent, I mean, walk in, look around. I didn't know any effective defense against somebody penetrating my mind at the time, wasn't even sure it was real. Since I studied Western witchcraft or Wicca, I learned ways to control that. You can build a mental shield around yourself and make it more difficult, if not prevent them from breaking in entirely. But at the time, I was a novice and knew nothing. I just had sort of a spacey, hippy-dippy view of the world,
At that time, yeah.
Yeah.
I think now she's quiet. Now, just now. So, like you said, like when you have pets, like I'm trying to think, like what does it can't be all animals that you're attracted to.
No. That's why I was trying to explain earlier. There are only certain very specific species that I'm attracted to.
Like you can have a pet and you're not you're not attracted to your pet. It's treated like a pet, right? So you have a certain, I guess, look or whatever that you like or see or action. Or is it just like when you know, like, I'm just trying to think, like, if you're walking down the street, walking by a dog park, like, or walking in a zoo, like, what catches your eye?
Dogs, well, first of all, haven't been mutilated, haven't had their tail stumped. Dogs with a nice long muzzle, but not too long, like a German Shepherd, not like a boxer. Those are the kind of dogs I'm attracted to. My previous dog, Pixel, was a Rottweiler Collie mix, and she had fur that was bulletproof. And when she was shedding, you could pull this stuff out by the handful, and it wouldn't hurt. Yeah, I mean, this dog would be comfortable at 20 below in the Arctic. Florida was not the place for her.
Yeah, no.
But no. Other animals, I don't know, it's a disposition. Sometimes it's the availability of an animal, That's called fence hopping, when you trespass on somebody else's territory to screw their animal. And, this can have bad consequences, too. While I was working as a reporter in the Southwest, there was an incident where a guy broke into a barn and fucked several mares. What was the problem with that? Well, the mares had already been impregnated by a stallion, and there's something called the Bruce effect. If the mares fuck again, they abort that fetus. And all four of the mares aborted.
Costly.
The guy was in big trouble,
crime.
Not just for bestiality, but
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, that's.
Let me point out something to you. If you only read about homosexuals when they were being busted by the police, like you did back in the 1950s and 1960s, you wouldn't have a very good opinion of homosexuals, would you?
You probably wouldn't.
No, because you'd only read about them in terms of criminality. So, first of all, when you make a national law against bestiality, like New Zealand has, where I ran into big trouble with a radio station, when you make a national law against bestiality, you criminalize a behavior that is not, as far as I can tell, what's the harm? This is the question that came up with the dolphin. What's the harm? The dolphin obviously wants to have sex with me. I don't know why. She asked me, how did you know she wanted to have sex with you? Well, for one thing, when I brought my girlfriend down to the park, or a girl I wanted to become my girlfriend, I really wanted to impress her, and she just freaked out when I told her I could get her to swim with dolphins. Little did I know that Dolly took one look at this young woman and didn't want to have anything to do with her. When the girl got in the water with the dolphin towed her to the far side of the pool and then smashed her snout into the girl's face. And I've got it on camera because I was about to take a picture of the wonderful moment, when the girl embraced the dolphin or whatever. Instead, the dolphin mashes its snout into her face. My shutter finger trips the camera reflexively. And the next thing I know, yes, she was jealous
of you already. Yeah.
And she sussed that out. I mean, how did she know that wasn't my sister or my niece?
They can, it's just so intuitive. You can just sense it, feel it.
This is what began to make me suspect that there was something going on here, that the dolphin was maybe aware of some stuff that she wasn't supposed to be.
So that was even before you with the dolphin, had sex with the dolphin.
Oh yeah, it was really early in our relationship.
She was already getting jealous even before that.
Yes, she had sort of decided that I was her property. I was going to be her man, whether I wanted to be or not, and she was going to. Now, her courtship at first was very physical and violent, because, in human terms, because dolphin courtship in the wild is. I mean, these are creatures that can swim each other at 20 miles an hour, butt heads and slide along each other and turn a triple flip in the air. One of the things that makes me almost sure, in fact, that they do have some kind of communication is a photo taken by an Australian named Wade Doak, who's been working with a group of dolphins. And what he photographed was 3 pairs of dolphins simultaneously jumping up and mating at the same time. And they're all 3 coordinated. They're all going in the same direction. They're all at the same point in the
wild dolphins.
Wild dolphins. They were never trained to do this. It's out in the middle of the ocean. You can see. If they couldn't talk to each other, how could they communicate that? How could they coordinate that?
They can. They'd have to coordinate it somehow.
Yes, yes. I submit that photograph as evidence that dolphins can communicate with each other, but it's not going to impress any scientist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's especially with if they were wild dolphins, no training, then there's no explanation for it. Then to communicate to do that exact same thing. But like, okay, so do you think there should be like limits, like, you know, keep it legal, but like limits of like sizes of certain animals, types of certain animals? I guess anything like that, like
Okay.
What could they do?
Let's stop here for a second and separate 2 things, at least the way I use them. Bestiality, first of all, is a legal term for sex with an animal. I think it has rather unpleasant connotations. I mean, it's the crime people are charged with when they're caught fucking their neighbor's goat or, you know, having sex with a pig in public.
Right.
Zoophilia is a emotional relationship, first of all, that you have with an animal. And sex, I guess, is one of the driving forces behind that relationship, the possibility of sex. You may not go all the way with the animal. Maybe the animal's too small, maybe you finger it or something, I don't know. It's, you know, it's between you and the animal, basically.
But you've, like, I guess, like we said, you're in a relationship, you've formed a bond, you've
right.
Loved
you
them,
don't want,
genuinely love them, and
well, you're affectionate towards them. I won't guarantee there's love, but you don't want to harm them. You don't want to hurt them. You don't want them to be up in pain. That concerns you. So a zoophile isn't likely to do anything that's going to hurt an animal.
Yeah,
a bestialist, yeah. Now, if a zoophile gets caught, they're going to be charged with bestiality. In fact, I'm told that in England, the law is against bestiality is such that if you're out on the moors and a friend sees you shagging a sheep, you should push him into a bog or off a cliff, because the penalty for manslaughter is less than the penalty for zoophilia.
Wow.
That's sort of I don't know if that's true or not, but
it might very well be. Who knows? Like, I think if the animal's not being hurt, I don't see anything wrong with it. I don't.
Well, let me point this out to you, okay? Here's the law, American law. I can buy an animal. I can breed that animal. I can tie up that animal to breed her, essentially have her mate rape her because she can't flee, she can't move. That's all okay. I can artificially inseminate that animal, so she's not even going to have an orgasm, and she's going to be forced to carry a child and deliver it. Okay? That's all okay. And finally, I can kill that animal, carve it up, cook it, eat it, sell it, whatever I want to do with the animal. Except I can't have sex with that animal, because that's disgusting.
I never looked at it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The only time this becomes an issue is when my pleasure is involved. not the animals. There's no concern for the animal there. I'm getting some pleasure from something that isn't human. Okay? Where does this law come from? Leviticus in the Bible. There's two injunctions against bestiality in the book of Leviticus. And the second one is worse than the first. The first one says, if a man lieth with an animal like a woman, or a woman submits to an animal as she does to a man, you shall put them to death. The second one says mostly the same things, except it says, and the animal too, because it was thought in barbaric or Bronze Age times that animals could be inhabited by succubi or incubi, evil spirits that wanted to have sex with humans for the purpose of spawning devils, and you know the riff, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So my contention would be that not only are laws against bestiality, for want of a better word, because I think the place to separate that is in the courts. If there has been harm done, zoophilia is the only crime which assumes that you are guilty before you're proven innocent. Because if you are charged with zoophilia, it's assumed that you've committed rape. Even if you haven't, even if no harm is done to the animal. If your semen is in her vagina, you're going to jail. And that violates the separation between church and state that is First Amendment. So I would maintain that laws like zoophilia that can only be rationalized or justified, I should say, because there's no rationalizing them. They can only be justified by resorting to scripture, violate the Constitution. Harm to animals, yes. Zoo sadists, as a person who harms animals with sexual intent, is called, yes. They should be treated just like pedophiles.
Yeah,
You already know how I feel about pedophiles. Yes. Throw them into the black hole of Calcutta, as far as I'm concerned.
So, so everything you said has actually kind of changed my opinion on some things a little bit and kind of opened my eyes. So, like, to me now, how I see it is, like you said, you've got your opportunists, the fence jumpers, that
fence
if
hoppers.
It was a kid, if it was a elderly woman, if it was
exactly
an animal, they just want to have sex, and they're going to get sex no matter what. So that's
the perverts are very focused in their perversions. There's a specific age range that a pedophile will target. There are certain species that a zoophile wants or desires. Some men are turned on by nuns, for God's sake. How can you possibly ask, why were you wearing that outfit on the night of the incident, when men will rape nuns? Old women.
Yeah.
It's not an act of sex. Rape is always an act of domination, submission, and violence. And I'm not into that.
Yeah.
For one thing, anybody who thinks that a naked man who I weighed 150 pounds dripping wet can rape a 400-pound dolphin who can swim at 18 miles an hour, dive to over 1,000 feet, and has 4 different ways to kill you in less than a minute. A Navy SEAL, 3 Navy SEALs. In fact, I've had Navy SEALs tell me that they are helpless when a dolphin is in the water. The dolphin can swim by, rip off their face mask, rip the respirator out of their mouth, rip off their swim fins, and push them up to the surface.
Yeah, you couldn't force a dolphin to do anything.
No, trainers will tell you that. Dolphin doesn't want to do, you got to feed it anyhow because you don't want them to get ulcers or get sick.
Mm-hmm.
But dolphins are always looking at the fish bucket. Trained dolphins, they're always looking in the fish bucket.
Well, so you got the fence jumpers, the opportunists. So you can't really classify them as zoophiles because they're not.
But you can. Your your topic was bestiality originally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's like it's broken down more. You've kind of broken it down more, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So like
well, I've made them real people. Before they were cardboard cutouts to you.
Yeah. So like, you know, you just automatically assume, or maybe I did or whatever, that if you like animals, you're gonna see every animal and want to have sex with every animal, regardless if it hurts them or whatever, you know. But now you've made me realize, like, if it's a zoophile, you know, they really truly care. And if they truly care, they're not going to do anything to hurt that animal that they care for.
No.
You know, so just like a sadist doing that to like a human and then doing that to an animal, they're trash. They need to disappear because they don't care about
at a minimum
pain. They don't truly care. They care just about them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I don't know. I was like, it's just I don't know law wise how they could term that, but there is such a big difference.
Well, bestiality, there wasn't any statute against it in Florida until 2011.
What caused this thing in 2011?
What?
What caused it to, like, did something happen?
Yeah, a Democratic state, I forget whether she was she must have been a state senator, yeah, Nan Rich, representing a rural county in Florida. This sounds awful. Some guy he was having an affair with a friend's goat. And the friend didn't know, of course. The goat was pregnant and therefore didn't want to have sex. And she was tied up. And the goat was trying to get away from the guy. And he had sex with her while she was strangling herself to death.
That's awful.
Yeah, that's really terrible. You know, you can't tell your partner is strangling to death. You're not paying attention.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what made that become a law in 2011.
Yeah.
So it just
she got all head up about it. And she passed a law that basically says, okay, you can't insert tab A into slot B. You can't insert tab C into slot D. You can't insert so on and so forth, and so telling you what goes where, you know? Where's the harm? Where is the definition of sexual harm to an animal that will play? Because putting my tab A into the animal's slot B if she's in heat doesn't hurt her. It doesn't hurt me. And it feels pretty darn good if you want to know the truth.
So really they should look at each case specifically.
Yes.
Each case specifically. I mean,
you have to ask, well, first of all, you know, stop criminalizing bestiality, criminalize sexual sadism with animals, you know, zoosadism.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. That is a worthy law.
I agree with that.
Mm.
I like that. That's how you could just that's one thing you could put into law, and then that way zoophiles who have no intentions to harm an animal and would never harm an animal because they care about them, they're not gonna be sadistic to them. That way it takes away that category of just good people that care for the animals. They should do that, just sadistic type.
I must say that, you know, the zoophiles I have known who were really into their animals regarded them as their mates. I think it's, you know, silly to get married to a dolphin like one woman out in Hawaii did about a decade ago. You know, that means nothing to the dolphin. But they do care about them, and they take one of the most serious threats you can make is to harm a zoophile's animal.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, because animals are trusting, you know.
Yeah.
They don't always know. You know, people talk about the magic senses of animals, and dogs always growl at bad people while the music on the screen changes. But that isn't always the truth. Animals get hornswoggled all the time. My dog will do anything for a bone, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so okay. So I'm gonna have to say then I am okay with people who care. I'm okay with people having, I guess, sex with animals when it doesn't hurt the animal. And it would be pretty obvious. It would be pretty obvious if you are hurting the animal.
Yes,
like just something too, like a chihuahua. Like I can imagine that would be too small. Maybe. I mean, I don't know.
You know, my second wife bred dogs. She had a 15-pound Shih Tzu that was her breeding bitch. Except that this dog was not in love with her Shih Tzu mate. She was in love with an 85-pound Chow mix that my ex-wife also had. And the two of them would screw like crazy. And you'd see this little bitch, you know, with this big foaming at the mouth and big doggy smile on her face, literally hanging, only her front paws touching the ground, off the back end of this big old Chow dog. And since then, I just think bitches are very elastic.
Yeah, they are. Yeah,
but you know, you don't want to hurt them. There are differences in size and things like that. I mean, the male dog swells up after he goes into the female, though.
Yes, I did.
Goes in very slender, yeah, and then like swells up.
Knot, like a knot.
Yes, there's a big bulge at the base of his penis. Yeah, it swells up in her labia, and that's what.
Wait for like 5 minutes or so or something like that for it to kind of go down, or else it'll hurt coming out or something.
So it can't get out. It's a spasm. Her muscles are in spasm. That's why neither of them can get loose. And actually what happens is that she relaxes because you usually see him pull out and he's still erect. He's still got that big red dick, which he starts licking. Anyway, let's talk about dolphins.
Okay.
Why don't you ask me?
Do you mind quick if I take a minute? And I think he's got to go potty.
Sure. Why don't we both take a minute?
He's got a very small bladder, so I'll be back. Good boy. Sorry.
That's all right. You care for your animals. My dog's sleeping on my bed. Yeah. She's waiting for a walk. She'll get one before I, settle in for the night.
Okay. So you said back to the dolphins.
Yeah. Maybe I could tell you a little bit of my conclusions as a result of this experience with Dolly and, ruminating on it for close to 50 years. Yeah. I think, when I was a kid, I mainly read science fiction from the 40s and 50s and early 60s. There were always these planets described where you had two races. One of them might be like the dominant race, and the other race, the story was about how they're discovered to really, they've been oppressed by the dominant race, but they're really intelligent, and usually in the end, things are worked out. I think we're a planet that has two dominant species, one on the land and one in the water. And in the water, the brightest, smartest, fastest thing around is unquestionably the dolphins. They range, in size up to the killer whale, which is the biggest dolphin. Baleen whales and the sperm whale, they're another group of marine mammals, yeah. But the dolphins encompass almost all of the small whales. And as I said, they've been around here 12 million years. Now, it was 2 million years ago that we started walking on our hind legs so we could see the leopards coming at us in the high grass of the Serengeti and pick up a stone and throw it at the leopard, hopefully, hitting a vital spot, driving it away. it's like there are two ways to go in the world. We chose the technological route. We started off chipping stones, and now, we're on the edge of building artificial intelligence, and God help us when that happens. I'm using God metaphorically there. The dolphins have a lot of time to occupy, and they don't have any hands to do anything with. I mean, they stroke each other with their flippers, they play around, they have sex, they fish, they swim. I don't know if they do much sightseeing. So what are they doing with all that time? What do you have to play around with in the ocean? You have your mind.
Yeah.
Dolphins, things that are automatically regulated in the human body, the dolphins can control manually. They can control their heartbeat. They can control their blood flow. When they dive to great depths and the pressure on their body is up over 400 pounds per square inch, their rib cage is made out of, flexible fabric, flexible ribs that collapse. It collapses completely. Yeah, there's no air pockets left in their body when they're down that deep. A whale, so-called whales, a dolphin species recently, astounded researchers by staying underwater for, I think it was 3 hours and 39 minutes or something. And they said, 39 minutes was supposed to be its limit. The 3 hours they didn't understand. But they have telemetry on this. The whale stayed down for 3 hours, and they don't, I think it might have been 4, but 3 or 4. They don't know how the whale does it.
Well, I have heard
dolphins and whales have abilities that in human beings you can only learn by going to study with people in Tibet, or the Tibetan monks or Hindu holy men. I mean, they really do things. There is a network of veins intertwining with arteries that they can shunt the blood through to cool their bodies.
Really?
Yeah, these are all things and even their breathing. I point this out, and my gosh, this is central to the whole story. Almost all mammals breathe automatically. You knock them out, they keep breathing. Dr. John Lilly developed a terrible reputation for working with dolphins by being the first man to try to anesthetize a dolphin, discovered they don't have any breathing reflex. If you put them to sleep, they die. They suffocate. He killed 5 dolphins at Marineland, Florida in the early 1950s before he figured out and made a respirator for them that kept injecting air into their airway. Did not win very much favor with Marineland's owners, by the way.
Yeah, no.
So a dolphin is thinking about every single breath. Every time it goes up to breathe, it has to breathe in between waves, in the trough of a wave. If it breathes while a wave is breaking, it's going to get water in its blowhole. And they breathe very quickly. They exhale and fill their lungs in about a 20th of a second. You can't do that. I can't do that.
No.
But their breath sounds like a muffled shotgun is what it sounds like.
It does?
Yeah, they go. And it's a big, you'll see a spout or a spray. That's the little bit of water that is contained. Their blowhole, although it seals hermetically, their blowhole is like their nostrils. It's behind their brain. Okay. Although it seals hermetically, there's a little bit of a groove in there that carries the water in it. And when they exhale, that blows out as a mist. And it looks like, they're exhaling water, but they're not. There's no water gets into their lungs.
Okay.
So I think that in addition to all these, the Hindus call them siddhis, these abilities, the dolphins has also done some things with their mind. And one of the things is, I think that's how they largely communicate with each other. If the dolphins have been talking to each other for 12 million years, Their language is probably down to a bunch of emojis. You know what I mean? Yeah. Hi, how are you? I'm fine. Yeah. It's very compact and condensed, and I assume that they can say a lot to each other with just a couple of squeaks or whistles. On the other hand, my indication is that when they have something really serious that they want to discuss or develop among themselves, they may use telepathy. And the images that they convey to each other are sound images. They're not visual images. They're the underwater sounds that are the dolphin's primary sense. Echolocation. Humans have just a tiny little bit of echolocation. You see a blind man tapping with a cane? He's listening to that tap sound because you can hear the echo from a nearby wall or, object coming back to you. Tap, tap. Dolphins build their whole life that way. A dolphin is not very badly disabled if you put suction cups over its eyes so it can't see. It uses its sonar. It can detect a pane of glass that you hang in the water, which is invisible. To the dolphin, it's like, okay, that's a wall. I don't want to go there. There was a scientist who was investigating this before World War II, but he stopped and he put all his papers away because he knew that any discoveries he made about dolphin sonar might be used by the Axis powers in their U-boats. Yeah, and you didn't want that happening. Or they might be used by enemy destroyers to find our submarines. So dolphin sonar did not become a thing until after World War II. And then scientists found it's amazing. It's astonishing. And dolphins can X-ray you when you're in the water with them because human tissue is 70% water. A sound beam that goes through the water will go through us just as well. Now, there's some argument about whether dolphins can do this to each other because they have a layer of blubber under their skin, which is thick, sound-absorbing fat. It's not sound absorbing because it serves any purpose, but it just is. So maybe when a dolphin tries to echolocate on a dolphin, all they see is the outside. But that's not really proven yet. Nobody knows because we're not talking to them.
Right.
But one thing they found is that dolphins, if you have two metal balls, 3 inches wide, okay, and in the center of one, there is a tiny little opening the size of a BB. The dolphin can detect that opening there with 80% accuracy, even though the opening doesn't show on the surface of the ball anywhere. It's just a little hole at the center of the ball. But it changes the tone of the ball when the dolphin sonar hits it. This one that's solid rings A, and this one that has a little hole in it rings a little off A. They can tell that.
That's crazy.
Yeah. If dolphins arrived here in spaceships, we'd bow down before them.
I mean, yeah, all we've studied of them, I bet we only still know like barely 50%. I bet we hardly even know 10% of the dolphins, if they've been here that long. And I mean, really, we haven't even been studying them that long.
No.
Compared to how long they've been here.
Right.
So, like, really, I can only imagine how much more to them there really is. It has to be. Just like the whole ocean. I know there's so many things down there that they just haven't even discovered, probably. It's just a whole other world.
There's always new stuff, pardon the expression, coming up in the field of benthic biology, We know more about the surface of the moon than we do about the bottom of the ocean here. I mean, the Navy is supposed to have very good maps, sonar maps of the bottom, but that only tells you the contours. It doesn't tell you anything about the life down there. And dolphins, just regular bottlenose dolphins like you meet in an oceanarium can dive down to over 1,000 feet.
That's crazy.
They can operate in absolute darkness in chillingly cold waters, 10 minutes, half an hour down there catching their lunch, whatever, and, pop right back up to the surface.
See, that's just crazy. Because, we have to have all these special suits, and then
yes.
may not even go that far or anything like that. Like,
if you get in the water with a dolphin, first of all, the dolphin notices that you are extremely badly designed for swimming. I mean, you know, we've all got the image of the creature from the Black Lagoon in our minds, right? And more recently, the creature from The Shape of Water, which I describe as a kinder, gentler version of the creature from the Black Lagoon. The only reason we have that is because the 1950s stuntman that was playing the creature had an anthropomorphic form. You know, he had 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head. Creatures that live in water don't look like that. Not even very primitive ones. You know, they look like primitive dolphins. They have, you know, kind of finger-like flippers, and they're blind, and they have big snouts, and they're not marine dolphins, they're river dolphins. Those are the most primitive dolphins around, and they're dying out, sadly, because people are killing them. The fishermen in South America slaughter them for fish bait.
I just recently learned that there are the dolphins that don't have to be in salt water.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that. Just that alone was amazing.
There's a really cool movie out of Brazil called Where the River Runs Black, which is a story about a boy who's raised by dolphins and what happens to him when he tries to enter the world of human beings. It's cool.
Yeah.
It'll restore your faith in delphinity.
Mm-hmm. Well,
You look like you're a bit overloaded.
There is. It's just like I'm just thinking there's just so much more to it than I even thought. That, like, my mind's going in multiple directions.
There's an overlap here between the two things we're talking about: bestiality / zoophilia and dolphins. And the overlap, I think that basically Dolly the dolphin approached me. She realized at that moment when I was in the water with her, this guy is different. There's a thought in his mind that wasn't there. Because you see, something that, take this at face value, something that she told me telepathically about her later on, was that she played that same game with just about every adult human who got in the water with her. And I say adult because she was very good with children. She never harmed or bothered children at all. She was playful and gentle with them.
She knew.
Yes, she knew about human relationships, which is more than we know about the dolphins. But she did that to every human that got in the water with her. Her trainer, of course, had trained her not to do it with him. And most of them either got embarrassed and got out, or thought it was funny and got out, but they all got out. Me, I kept coming back because I was trying to shoot photos for this book. And besides that, Dolly was doing something else that other women weren't doing in my life. She was showing me some attention. She was treating me more like a man than the women I met. Admittedly, it was like, a dolphin man, but I mean, she was trying to masturbate on my foot, and pushing me underwater when I wouldn't make my foot accessible to her. But Dolly had the reason she had a Jones for me is because she was very interested in human beings. Let me tell you something about dolphins, okay? There's a dead dolphin scientist named Dr. Ken Norris, who's very famous for studying dolphins in the wild in the Pacific Ocean. And he long ago said, dolphins have sex the way humans shake hands. Now, that's an oversimplification, of course, but it's casual in their world. It's very casual. It's like a handshake, 2 pods of dolphins meet, they all mix it up for a while, they go catch some fish, and then they swim their separate ways. That's dolphin society. Dolphins are really puzzled, from what I can tell, by why we won't shake hands with them. Why we are so hesitant and this is the source of so much frustration and obstruction around us. They just don't understand it. Dolly decided she was going to find out. She was going to test every human that came in the water with her and find one who was willing to have sex with her. That is I see. At the time, I thought I was dealing with a neurotic dolphin, but she had access to the water, to open water, and would sometimes swim off overnight with a pair of male dolphins that would, swimming through the area. I mean, she'd just take off with them, have her one night stand, come back to the ocean area. She could do that. She was put in the pen where her companions were count them, five male dolphins with attitudes varying from cheerful to satanic. She wanted me. She made this absolutely clear when I got in the water with her. And the male dolphins, I think, were a bit jealous of me. I tried getting in the water with them, and the very clear message I got was "get out."
They didn't like it.
No, they were playing games with me. Like both of them swing by real fast, about 6 inches away from me. So I feel two simultaneous shock waves on either side. Yeah, it was scary.
See, that's them communicating. They're gonna get you out of there. Yeah, that's amazing. And for all you know, Dolly could have been talking to the other dolphins and saying, "Hey, I'm going to go see if this human does this," or you never know.
Yeah, you never know. But any information that she got from the contacts with me, she could, at least while she was still doing her act, transmit to other dolphins in the wild. So she acted. I told you I had the feeling of, being probed when I was watching my hands turn into crabs.
Mm-hmm.
Dolly was acting like a space probe from the water world into the world of human beings. She was acting just like our planetary probes do, except she was probing the human mind, or trying to. Dolphins, from what I can tell, our thoughts are just a jumbled mess to them. I mean, the neuroses and the anger and the suppressed rage and the desires, and it's a mess. Smoking pot does kind of clarify that because it gives the pot user a kind of single-focused attention. And this
maybe I need to go smoke some pot after this and just focus on one of my thoughts. Then right now, that's all going on in my head.
Yeah, yeah. So I found it helpful. Once Dolly had identified herself to me. Now, it didn't always happen with pot either. I mean, there were some times when I was straight and I'd be in touch with her. Now, since I had that experience, I have found several authors that have written books about human dolphin telepathy, so I don't feel like I'm alone. There was a New Zealand fisherman, Frank Robson, who wrote 2 books about it in the 1970s. There was an English trainer, I used to be in touch with him, named David Holroyd, who was known as the psychic trainer. He trained a blind dolphin to do a show psychically.
Yeah.
Yes. He said, you just open your mind and you have a real clear picture of what you want the dolphin to do. And as soon as the dolphin gets the picture, they'll go do it. Rick O'Barry, who trained the dolphins for the Flipper TV series, told me the same thing. I have him on tape. He just won't admit to it now because he's afraid people will think he's a wacko.
Okay.
Yeah. And the French freediver, I think his name was Jacques Mayol, wrote about his telepathy with dolphins. He had felt very close to them. A military man, Colonel John Alexander, mentions telepathy with dolphins in a book called, I don't know, Things That Shouldn't Happen But Did. His ex-wife, who at the time was his wife, had a link with the dolphins, and he said he proved dolphin telepathy by, saying to the dolphins, "Okay, swim left." Well, they all swim left. Okay, now tell them to swim right. They all swim right. I mean, here's a guy who has communication with arguably the second most intelligent creature on the planet, and he's giving them orders like a bunch of soldiers on a parade ground. That is not right. What a shitty limited thing to do. You've got a whole alien mind at your disposal. See, this is the thing I don't understand about the UFO people. We've got this fabulous, incredible life form right here on our planet. Most scientists believe in the reality of dolphins.
Yeah.
It's their intelligence they question, and there is considerable debate going on from they're no smarter than chickens to, they may have a language and, maybe sort of like us. I think they're, by virtue of their extreme age, they have greatly surpassed us in certain abilities in certain realms. It just stands to reason.
For being here this long, they have to. They just don't have hands, and they're a different world.
Yeah.
So
it's easier. It would be easier for us to talk to another air-breathing alien than to communicate with the dolphins in the sea. That's because sound doesn't travel well from air to water or vice versa. You have to put a hydrophone down there. In fact, I question how dolphins are able to hear anything in the air because they don't have any external ears. Their ear hole is reduced to like a tiny little pinhole in the side of their head. They hear through the bone structure of their lower jaw, it turns out, which is like a shotgun microphone.
That's crazy.
So how do they hear trainers, when the trainer is yelling a command to them? I think a lot more telepathy is going on than people will admit to. I think a lot of dolphin trainers, when you get them in the back room at a marine mammal conference somewhere, after a long night of chugging margaritas or whatever, and you smoke a couple of joints with them, they start telling you stories that you won't hear any other way. And the stories are like this, And I'd go out there stoned, but they always knew when I was stoned, and they'd start fucking with me. They start messing up the act, like that. We don't treat them right. We don't treat them right at all. I think they should be regarded as non-human persons, and the same penalties or strictures should be applied to people who harm them as who harm human beings. They're not human. I will never say dolphins are human. I'm writing a piece now for my blog about there's a saying that dolphins are not little people in wetsuits. I'm writing about all the reasons why dolphins are like little people in wetsuits.
Yeah, they're extremely intelligent. I've always known that about them, but I've never took the time.
It's how they apply their intelligence. You'd never expect them to apply their intelligence to trying to seduce you. But that's what Dolly did over 6 months. She carried this out for 6 months with me only going down to the park like maybe once every week, once every 2 weeks. She didn't see that much of me. I wish I'd spent a lot more time with her now, believe me. I wish I'd had a more methodical kind of mind that could really dream up some experiments to do with her. I describe in the book one time when I started out trying to, it's called shaping their behavior. I tried to shape her vocalizations to make her say her name, say Dolly. And started out getting ended up being something like Dolly. And it was, quite sensational. I mean, Lily writes about this woman, Margaret Howe, who used to work with him. I mean, she was going on for months. And, if you listen to the tapes of her, the dolphin that she was working with, Peter Dolphin, is just getting exasperated because she has him do the same thing over and over and over, which is great for science, but a dolphin won't put up with it. They always want to be doing something new.
Yeah.
See, put yourself in the sea. You want to put something down? Where do you put it down? It's going to float away. You want a room? There's no rooms. They get washed away. There's no solid. Everything in the sea is always changing. You have to have, if you're going to be a smart animal, a big, complex brain to factor in all these things. Nothing is fixed except the surface of the water. That's the only thing you can count on. And the bottom of the sea. Everything in between is in a constant state of flux.
Yeah, you constantly have to be on alert, thinking, planning.
Well, dolphins sleep with only half their brain at a time.
Really?
That's another thing. Yes, they're unique. They can apparently they study the sleep patterns by looking at the eyes for what do they call it? The movements of the eyeball under the eyelid, to tell if they're dreaming. Yeah, REM sleep. They'll have one eye open and one eye closed, and they'll swim in a circle with the closed eye inwards so they can see outwards, and then they'll switch and they'll open the eye that was shut and they'll swim the other way. And this is so they're resting half their brain at a time.
And still being on alert.
Yes. A mother dolphin, after giving birth, doesn't sleep for a month.
Really?
She doesn't sleep at all. She stays awake and takes care of her baby until she can get another dolphin, probably a relative, to watch it. That would kill any other animal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So they can their abilities are even far more than they could probably even do far more than what they've even discovered. So
yes. Well, the attitude of there's a law in science called Occam's razor. Entities must not be multiplied beyond necessity. That means don't make things up if you don't have to. If there's a simpler explanation, choose it. Given the chance between, you come home and you find the door open and your silverware drawers have been ransacked, you don't think, this is the work of spirits. You think, there's been a goddamn burglar in this house. Because that's the simpler hypothesis. Scientists like to be hit over the head with facts before they believe them because, let's face it, I live on my Social Security and what I make from the sale of my books. I'm beholden to nobody. I can hold the most extreme theories I want to. But if a scientist was to espouse these same theories, they'd lose all their funding in 5 minutes.
That's true. That's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they don't want to tick off a certain group that is donating to them, or.
Well, it's not even a matter of ticking them off. It's a matter of orthodoxy. Science has this current view of the world, which is under some stress, that it is all material. And if you're dealing with something like telepathy, it's just your imagination. You're deluding yourself. Well, how did I convince the dolphin about all the problems we humans have with sexuality? After I did that, the way she was courting me changed. She became very gentle. She started, stroking me and mouthing me very gently. When a dolphin opens their mouth, they have 88 little sharp teeth. They're sharp when they're young. And runs her teeth along your arm or your leg so gently. It's just amazing that those jaws can bite a barracuda in two. They can snap a tuna in half. The dolphin is suddenly being very gentle with me, and it was amazing. It made the hair on my neck stand up. She was a different creature. She suddenly became very erotic, and she understood how to be erotic with me. And that was when we really began hitting it off. That was when I stopped resisting the courtship and began accepting it.
I do wish you got to spend more time with her, because who knows what other things you could have learned. And just because you could have spent more time with her. And I do believe, especially with the breathing thing, I do think she killed herself from a broken heart. And that.
Well, it wasn't just a broken heart. That was the point I made in Dolphin Lover. I've modified that view a little bit. I think a broken heart was definitely part of it. But, from having had the freedom of the seas when she was out in the Gulf acting with the riverboat, she was, first of all, put in a community pool with her dolphin lover, dolphin, the male dolphin that she hung with all the time. He was doing the show, and her trainer said she was getting in his way, inhibiting him, getting under him when he jumped and stuff like that. So he moved her out of that pool and put her in a tiny little pen or pool. It was basically like a bathtub size thing. It was right at the front of the stage. And from this pool, she could see open water. And I think that's what killed her. The sight of open water that she couldn't get to. Her circumstances had changed. She was no longer going out with the riverboat. There was none of that, freedom. Dolphins don't do captivity real well. And they don't tell you about all the ones that have died in oceanariums, hanging their heads against the walls or holding their breath,
That's awful.
Yeah.
Especially because, you see everyone saw I think it was Blackfish documentary.
Blackfish, and there was also The Cove that came out a couple of years before that.
I haven't heard of that.
The Cove is about Taiji, where they have a drive hunt on dolphins, Japan. And it's about actually placing some cameras in some remote operated hidden cameras to get films of the drive hunt, and they did it successfully. They thought it would stop the drive hunts. It hasn't.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, when you're a poor fisherman. See, the price of a dolphin, okay, when I was in 1970, you could buy an untrained dolphin for $150. The price now, upwards of $150,000.
So, like, for fishermen to catch one to sell to.
Yeah. And they don't just catch one, they catch a whole group. They pick out the pretty ones for the oceanariums, and then they kill and butcher the rest. Well, I will admit something to you. In the winter of 2012, 2013, when they had a drive hunt that was televised, and there was this one little white dolphin that was captured. And it was said, I don't know if this is true, it was said that when she was pulled into the boat, the female dolphin accompanying her, apparently her mother, went down and never came up again. Her mother committed suicide. I got so upset about this. And again, this is a mental problem that I have. It's happened to me on a couple of other occasions. I began plotting how to kidnap or kill the Japanese consul in Miami. Seriously. If I had had a truck that was reliable, and I had had enough money to buy a bulletproof vest and a gun, I probably would have done something terrible. And something, it turns out, that would have played into the ultra-nationalist Japanese right wing, played right into their hands, because But I realized what I was thinking, and I got some psychiatric help for it, because I was thinking about cold-blooded murder. I was going to drive up, make the price of dolphins too expensive.
Well, because how can you not feel that way? Because that's what they're doing to them. They're intelligent animals with feelings.
See, the Japanese fishermen don't see them that way. They call them the cockroaches of the sea. Yeah, and they the dolphins don't even eat the same fish that the fishermen do. They're after trash fish. They're easier to catch. It's something mental. It's the need to hate something that is beautiful and loving and caring. And I hope that someday, some fisherman is going to fall off his boat and be lost in the ocean. Some dolphin is going to push him to shore, and maybe that will change their attitude, but nothing else will. There are environmental groups in Japan now that are working for those dolphins. And they also have a problem with this in the Faroe Islands, where they conduct drive hunts against pilot whales. The big problem is, you've got all these unregulated oceanariums all over Asia now. They're all over China. They're in Indonesia, traveling dolphin shows where the dolphins perform in a vinyl blow-up pool, ride in the back of a station wagon when they're, they can survive for a long while out of water, although it's not good for them because all their weight is on the lungs. See, it's hard for them to breathe. But I just try to combat it. I've told my story. Here's what I found out dolphins are. Why don't you find out this? Maybe you don't want to believe it. Maybe you don't have the courage. Maybe you don't have, maybe you're not warped like I am. But I can just tell you as a journalist what I found. I can't tell you as a scientist because I don't have that kind of a mind. I have to measure twice before I cut anything. And, I am not a guy for filling out forms. Any kind of a form you give me gets instantly messed up. So, yeah, I'm just not good at taking field notes or anything scientific. But I make a great reporter. I really do. I won several awards out west.
Awesome.
Yeah. The difference between a scientist and a reporter, of course, is that if a scientist gets something wrong, it's published in a little journal, 200 people in his specialty read about it the next day, and he loses, his college grant or whatever. If a journalist gets something wrong, 100,000 people read about it the next day, and he's looking for a new job.
Yeah.
So, in some ways, being a journalist is harder, I would submit, than being a scientist.
Yeah. Bigger audience to please and make mad or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, okay. And I don't even know. This is my own curiosity, and I probably won't even put it on my thing, but I really am curious. Like, how does like a dolphin's vagina feel compared to a woman, like a human's vagina versus like, I don't know, like how, like I just, you know what I mean? Like what?
Okay, I hear you. It's a legitimate question. Well, first of all, you're having sex with a dolphin in the water. So you've got some lubricating medium around there. Secondly, I told you the dolphin's vagina was different. There is a muscle at the opening at the mouth of the vagina called the external adductor muscle. And this can seal the vagina quite tightly because if salt water gets into a dolphin's womb, it kills any sperm cells that a male dolphin may have put there. Dolphins are and whales are the only mammals that have their testicles internal to the body. The sperm can stand the body heat, but they can't stand seawater at all, and it kills them instantly.
Oh, okay.
So the female dolphin has to keep any salt water out of her vagina if she wants to conceive. Despite my best efforts at 20, I was not able to penetrate Dolly all the way. I was not able to get past that external adductor muscle, so I didn't get into her vagina. But we had a really wonderful time, and apparently I brought her to orgasm just by having sex with her labia that are pretty deep. They're bigger than a woman's, and her clitoris is large and exposed. And there goes that sawmill again.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
As we had a simultaneous orgasm. I can't even describe how that happened. I mean, we're not even the same species. But I know because she groaned, I thrust and she groaned, and I thrust again and she groaned. And I thrust the third time and she went, oh, and then I came. And I presume she did too. Because afterwards I was hanging onto this fence and she swam up to me, laid her snout on my shoulder, embraced me with her flippers, and with just her left eye, she looked deep into my eyes. And I still see that look today in front of me. I can sum it up. It is loving, it is tender, it is familiar, it is haunting, it is strange, and it is very, very deep. I felt like I made love with something that was millions of years old. Something that just didn't share my human hangups. And she was tremendously pleased with both me and herself for this communion, you know? Whitley Strieber says he got raped by aliens. I've told him, we've got something in common because, I made love with this dolphin. And, well, the dolphin was a lot more real than Whitley's visitors are,
Yeah.
He's never been able to pull him out of a hat to show to anybody. He's got all these weird stories about the things that happen around him. But, I've got pictures of me and Dolly not having sex. It wouldn't have done any good because the water at the park was very cloudy. And you wouldn't have been able to see anything because she took us underwater anyway. When I look at my life and I look at the very improbable things that have happened to me, one being born into this Oregon energy cult, which not more than a couple of thousand people in America belong to.
Yeah, which I'm
two, making love with a dolphin. And three, the story that I wrote about in my book Melchior, An Interstellar Affair, which basically was my second wife's story. She seduced an alien, if you believe her. I could never prove her wrong. I used all my skills as a journalist to test her story. Every time I came to a decision tree, it broke in her favor. So the Air Force had a record of this thing. What else? There was a newspaper article. This all devolves from the fall of a meteor on August 2nd, 1978, which apparently was very big, about a couple of meters in diameter, and which exploded over Cheyenne, Wyoming, 15 miles up in the air where nobody heard it, basically space. But it exploded with the force of a small nuclear bomb, so we're glad it didn't hit the Earth.
Jeez, yeah.
Yes. Meteors can explode that way because they're very cold in outer space, and they slam into the Earth's atmosphere, and the outside heats up to like 4,000 degrees, and the inside is still minus 200 degrees, and the thing just goes bluey. Yeah. She was living in a cabin in the Rockies outside of Durango. And that night, she woke up, she says, and there was a man in a silver suit standing by the foot of her bed. And she thought she was dreaming at first. But then he operated a little box he had, and she found the sleep paralysis that had been bothering her went away, and she could move. And she sat up and she looked at the guy. His eyes were all black and he was bleeding. He'd hit his head or something. She thought maybe there's been an accident down on the road, but she hadn't heard anything. And she wants to help this guy, and he grabs her, drags her out of his bed, barely get her nightgown on. He drags her out into the woods where there's this big egg-shaped object on the side of a hill in a grove of aspens. And the story goes on from there. But she remembered all this. It emerged from her unconscious 2 weeks before we were going to get married.
Really?
Yeah. And I said, honey, I'd love to believe you. And I really want to believe you. But do one thing for me. Will you go see a psychiatrist?
Well, I wonder what made her all of a sudden recall it.
The X-Files had just happened. This was 1993 or 94. Okay. We'd just seen the episode of the X-Files where, what's it called? Mulder and Scully go to Ellen's Air Force Base and see captured UFO technology. And then the camo guys capture Mulder, and Scully has to hold a fake journalist who's really a spy at gunpoint to get Mulder back, and she gets him back, but his brains have been wiped. So
we
saw that, and she fell asleep. She fell asleep during the show. I stayed up. I was sitting in bed and ruminating and, talking to her and getting grunts back. And I said, I made some remark about people from outer space. And she said, she mumbled, literally. I didn't hear her the first time she said it. Sort of like waking up in the middle of the night and finding a man in a metallic suit standing in your room. And I went,
What?
Yeah, I froze. I literally froze. I mean, I know what that, I know, I've studied UFOs a lot. I know what that was. It was an abduction. And I couldn't, she said, no, I wasn't abducted. I went voluntarily. I said, voluntarily? And this fantastic story emerged that involves interplanetary war, interspecies seduction, CIA hunting for UFOs and stuff like that. I just kind of threw everything into a blender and wrote a novel out of it, changed the names.
Yeah.
And it also involves her first husband, who was a real cad, who treated her very badly and fathered 2 children with her that stayed with her when he left, taking his kids. And he came back into their life while I was still married to her, and completely destroyed my relationship with her without even trying. I mean, it's not like the guy was bad or anything. It's just that he was the kid's father. And suddenly I was chopped liver. I had been the authority figure in their lives for like 5 years. Last year, I was just out. They didn't pay me any more respect. They wouldn't do anything I told them to. The wife was upset because he was back in her life again. It was just a mess.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Guys, stop it. Well, it is kind of funny though that y'all watched the X-Files though, and then she remembered that. That's kind of
something quick.
So it either clicked or
she said that the aliens had, these were very humanoid aliens, much more so than the Greys. The main difference was they were tall, they were thin, and they had all black eyes, like a rodent size. I don't know why. They wiped her mind before they sent her back. The mental blocks lasted for years, but eventually they give way, and they give way in unpredictable ways. I mean, this is true even if you try to, what is it, post-hypnotic suggestion? Yeah, that's the term. Even if you try a post-hypnotic suggestion in a human, even if a human does it to a human, you can make people forget stuff, but the memories will surface unconsciously in dream images and stuff like that. You can't ever get rid of a memory. You just can't, unless you, these days, maybe zapping the brain somehow.
Sure.
So those are 3 really extraordinary things I've had happen to me in my life. The dolphin is just one of them. It's the only one that's gotten any attention so far, I suspect, because, well, the guy who helped me with the audio version of Melchior told me that my relationship with Dolly is a standing joke in every bar in the United States. In other words, guys, in a bar, or maybe girls, I don't know, that guys in a bar, talking sports, talking, whatever guys talk about. I don't do bars much. It's fine to get around. And what about that guy, man? That guy that had sex with a dolphin? Did you hear about him? This motherfucker had sex with a dolphin, man. Can you believe it? A dolphin. And by the way, to finish your request, the dolphin feels more rubbery than a woman's vagina does. Yes. It's rather firmer tissue, I think. Because the male dolphin's penis is not inflatable like the human penis. It's pretty much a shaped wand of what do you call it? Ligament, or it's rigid, and the male dolphin pulls it back into the body, rigid, and then extends it again when he wants to use it. That's another thing they can do voluntarily. They have a switchblade penis. They can erect it on demand.
They don't need any pills.
No, they don't need any.
That's funny. Well, they're very neat. So yeah, this conversation's taken me to just like wanting to research dolphins and and just research dolphins. That's really interesting.
It
I
is.
didn't know a lot of that stuff you said. So I think the
How long?
bestiality convo turned to me wanting to look into dolphins. So thank you. That's
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. I'm really glad when I can make a change in somebody. You know, I had a guy order 4 copies of What Got Us recently from the Netherlands, and I wanted to make sure he wasn't a teenager, so I sent him an email. You know, I don't sell the book to anyone under 18. All my books are like that because they're all very vivid about sex.
yeah.
And he said, "No, I'm 54. I'm a Dutchman. And yours was the first book I've ever read in my whole life that made me cry." Do you know what that means to a writer?
Probably.
You've really gotten to people. Your message has gotten through. That's the most wonderful thing anybody ever told me. That, you know, my book made you cry. Because it's a sad book. It's a funny book. It's a wonderful book. Uh, since you're in the United States, I will send you a copy if you want. If you want.
I will buy it.
Okay.
That's only fair. You can still make money off of it. But because I mean,
also,
yeah.
if you have any friends in Russia, by the way, there is also a Russian translation available, which was done. Yes, it was done by a fan, a Russian who speaks English. He was in his early 20s at the time. He was just so knocked out by the book. He said, "God, really want my friends and family to read this." He spent a year working on a translation, which I'm told is a very good translation into Russian. And then he called me and said, he emailed me actually and said, "Oh, by the way, Mr. Brenner, I've written this Russian translation. Do you mind if I give it to my friends and family?" I said, "Fuck, publish it. Publish it. You went to all the trouble." So he's published it in Russia, and he has trouble advertising it because he lives in a very rural, conservative part of the country.
Yeah,
But
that might be hard.
He sold a bunch of copies to some Russian dolphin trainers and things like that. See, people, I'm told that my book is discussed in every oceanarium in this country where they keep dolphins.
But they keep them captive.
Yes.
And they think, and then they're saying that you're awful. But you didn't, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, you didn't do anything to harm her.
No.
You loved, I mean, you felt for her, you cared for her, she cared for you.
I was planning to buy her. How does that sound? I was planning to buy her, rehabilitate her, and set her free. That's what I wanted to do with her. The only thing you can give a dolphin is freedom.
Yes.
A gold ring doesn't mean anything to them. Diamonds, pearls, they play with them.
Yeah, I wish you could have given her that. That breaks my heart. And I'm sure it still does yours.
It broke my heart. It took me 5 full years to get over her death because I didn't know how to grieve her. There's no self-help book that'll tell you how to grieve a dead dolphin.
And how can you describe the feeling that you have to people?
It's very complicated. You know, this whole relationship is so complicated. I mean, it wasn't just, skin to skin.
Mm-hmm.
It was mind to mind.
Yeah.
And people don't know what that's like. I've had other experiences with animals. I've never really had telepathy with a human, except sometimes, I think, with my wives when, we were really deep into making love or something. Other animals have contacted me, though. A hummingbird flew into a church building by accident. A thirsty dog in a park. A little bird that was. I was skiing and I was wondering how the birds made a living with all the snow on the ground. And the bird said, "Oh, it's not bad. It's getting to be spring now. There are bugs out." And I said, "Right, bugs." 50 feet down the ski slope, there were flying bugs. They just emerged from the snow.
That's really crazy. I'll have to hear.
Yeah, it is. You see, the trouble with telepathy is it's such a weird thing to us that we don't believe it when it's actually happening to us. We think we're being deluded. Other cultures, tribal cultures, do not share this prejudice. And but, there's a danger to that too, because I lived in the Navajo culture and they are sensitive to things like this, but they're terribly, terribly afraid of black magic and what they call witchcraft, which is actually sorcery. And if you're a traditional Navajo, that can rule your life because there's nothing you as an individual can do about it. You have to go to the medicine man and give him a nice fat sheep, and then he'll perform a ceremony for you and bust the spell. So I know I'm sort of between two worlds on this. I'm definitely not in the scientist's world of matter and physics, and I'm definitely not into the paranormal world, I guess I'd call it, because there's too much baggage there. I mean, I don't believe in reincarnation. Nobody has ever been able to explain life after death to me. Ghosts? No. So many of the things that people in that world just assume, I disagree with. I have no evidence for them.
Yeah.
So hang me out to dry somewhere else. Terry Lee, I'm getting rather tired, so I hope you don't mind if I bring this to a close now. Are there any other questions that you are absolutely dying to ask me?
I'm sure there will be that I'll think of. I'll email you if I have them. But yeah, my dogs are getting restless too, but I really enjoy talking to you.
Well, I think we've gone 2.5 hours, haven't we? Huh?
Yeah, I'll talk to you again, even if it's off, not even an interview. I enjoy talking to you. I really am going to research dolphins more. I've always thought they're smart. And whenever I go to like Florida and we're on the highway, I always like stare at the ocean and just hope I get to see them. And when I do, I just get so excited. So.
Well, where do you go to in Florida?
Clearwater, home of Scientology.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. My stepmother used to live in Clearwater.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are boat tours out there that know where all the dolphins live and could take you out there and get you out among them without too much trouble if you really wanted to see them. I took some beautiful photos of dolphins in fact, they like to ride the boat's, stern wave, the waves kicked up by the outboard. Okay. And they'll do that for hours sometimes.
Yeah, maybe next time we go, I can get my husband to get us one of those little boats and go on, because I've never seen one up close.
Well, have somebody take you out. They know where the dolphins are. Go on a dolphin cruise,
Okay.
Yeah. There's one down here. There's one in Port Charlotte, as a matter of fact. I'm sure there's the same thing up in Sarasota too. You just improve your likelihood of seeing the dolphins if you go with somebody who's familiar with their habits.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for talking to me and putting up with my not knowing how to do anything and forgetting my own questions.
It's all right, Terry. It's been a very good interview for me because you're charming and your questions are very reasonable and you're very sincere too. And you don't hate me.
I don't.
That's the nicest thing of all. No.
Okay. All right. Well, take care, and I hope to talk to you again.
Thank you. I hope we do too.
All right.
So long.
Bye.